Sophia Thompson was 8 years old when she disappeared during a school field trip to the Natural History Museum in Chicago on Tuesday, March 15, 2019. It was a perfect day for an outing. The sun was shining over the windy city, and 45 third graders were excitedly leaving Washington Elementary School. Sophia wore her school uniform perfectly pressed, navy blue skirt, white blouse, and red cardigan with the school crest embroidered on it. Her mom, Sarah, had styled her hair that morning into 2 perfect braids, securing them with blue ribbons that matched her uniform. The little girl was practically bouncing with excitement as she packed her lunchbox. Her mother had prepared everything carefully. PB&J sandwich with the crusts cut off, apple juice box, and chocolate chip cookies. Sarah worked as a cashier at Target, and her husband, Michael, drove for Lyft, but they always found a way to give their 2 children the best. Sophia was the oldest, intelligent, responsible, and caring. Her brother Tyler was barely 5 years old and adored his big sister. That morning he had cried because he couldn't go on the field trip too. Sarah would remember every detail of that morning afterward. How Sophia had asked if she could bring money for the museum gift shop, the $20 bill she had given her, the kiss on the cheek before running toward the school bus, and the bright smile when she turned from the window to wave goodbye. She never imagined it would be the last time she'd see that smile. This is the most disturbing story we've told about the disappearance of a child. A story where technology revealed a truth no one expected, where a simple video changed everything, and where the darkest secrets sometimes come from the closest places. Before we begin with this shocking true story, if you value cases like this where the truth takes years to come to light, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments what country and city you're watching from. We love getting to know our community. Now let's discover what really happened to Sophia Thompson. The Thompson family lived in a modest apartment in the South Side neighborhood of Chicago. It wasn't the fanciest part of the city, but it was their home. 2 small bedrooms, one for the parents and one shared by Sophia and Tyler. The kids always had clean clothes, school supplies, and food on the table. Even though Sarah and Michael worked long hours to make it happen, Sophia was a dedicated student. She loved to read, and her favorite subject was English. She dreamed of becoming a teacher when she grew up, like Mrs. Anderson, who was organizing the field trip that day. The girl was one of those students that teachers adored. Always raised her hand to participate, helped her classmates, and never caused problems. The school bus left at 8:30 in the morning. Mrs. Anderson sat up front checking her list while the kids sang popular songs. She was accompanied by the teacher's aide, Mrs. Roberts, and 3 parent volunteers. 5 adults supervising 45 children. Everything seemed under control. The museum was 40 minutes away. The kids arrived excited, getting off the bus in orderly groups. Mrs. Anderson gathered them at the entrance and explained the rules in a firm but kind voice. Nobody separates from the group. Everyone must pay attention. If anyone needs to use the restroom, they must ask first. The children entered the museum in a line. It was Tuesday, a day with few visitors, perfect for a school group. The first halls displayed ancient civilizations, monumental stone statues, and old artifacts behind glass cases. The kids listened, fascinated, while the teacher explained each piece. Sophia was holding hands with her best friend, Madison. The 2 girls were always together at school, at recess, and at birthday parties. They were inseparable. Madison had lighter hair than Sophia and was a little taller, but they shared the same contagious laugh and the same love for Disney princesses. For 2 hours, the group toured the halls without problems. The kids took photos with school-provided iPads, asked questions, and marveled at the ancient treasures. Mrs. Anderson felt proud of how well her students were behaving. At 11 in the morning, after 3 complete halls, the teacher decided it was time to rest. She took them to the museum's outdoor plaza, a spacious area with leafy trees, green grass, and wooden benches. The kids could eat their lunch and play for 30 minutes, the plaza filled with children's laughter. Some kids played tag, others sat in circles sharing their food. The parent volunteers watched from different points while Mrs. Anderson rested on a bench near the main fountain. Sophia and Madison found a bench under the shade of a large tree. They took out their lunchboxes and began eating while chatting about their favorite things. Madison was telling her about the new dress her mom had bought her. Sophia showed her a bracelet she had made with colored beads. Everything was perfect, everything was normal, and everything was as it should be. Then Madison announced she needed to use the bathroom. Sophia was finishing her sandwich and decided to stay waiting for her on the bench. Mrs. Anderson was visible from where they were, just 20 meters away. Madison asked if she was sure about staying alone. Sophia nodded without worry. She wasn't really alone. There were other kids playing nearby. Adults were watching. The museum was a safe place. Madison ran toward the bathrooms that were inside the museum building, promising to return in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes changed everything. Sophia sat on the bench finishing her apple juice. She swung her legs that didn't reach the ground. She watched her classmates play. The sun filtering through the tree leaves created patterns of light and shadow on her blue and white uniform. When Madison returned from the bathroom 7 minutes later, the bench was empty. Sophia's lunchbox was still there. Her backpack with her favorite princess logo was still there. But Sophia had disappeared. Madison looked around confused. She called for her friend. She walked a few steps, searching with her eyes. She thought maybe Sophia had gone to play with other classmates, but when she checked the groups of children, Sophia wasn't with any of them. Madison's heart began to beat faster. She ran to where Mrs. Anderson was and pulled her arm. The urgency in her voice made all the nearby adults turn immediately. Mrs. Anderson felt the world stop. She asked when the last time Madison saw Sophia was. 7 minutes. Only 7 minutes had passed since Madison entered the bathroom. 7 minutes when nobody was specifically watching Sophia. The search began immediately. Mrs. Anderson gathered all the adult volunteers and divided the plaza into sections. Each one checked their area, shouting Sophia's name. The other children, frightened by the urgency in the adults' voices, also began looking for their classmate. They checked behind every tree, under every bench, and in every corner of the plaza. Nothing. Mrs. Roberts ran inside the museum to check the bathrooms, the halls they had visited, and any place where a girl could have gotten lost. Nothing. 10 minutes turned into 20. 20 turned into 30. Anguish transformed into panic. Mrs. Anderson, with trembling hands, called the school principal. Her voice broke as she explained that Sophia Thompson had disappeared. The principal ordered her to call the police immediately, then the parents. Mrs. Anderson dialed 911 with fingers that could barely hold the phone. While she waited for them to answer, she looked at the remaining 44 children, who watched her with scared eyes. One was missing. One of the children under her care had disappeared. The museum security guards were notified. They reviewed the security camera footage while the police arrived. The images showed Sophia sitting on the bench. Madison walking away toward the bathrooms. Sophia was waiting alone, and then, at 11:26 in the morning, a woman approached the bench where Sophia was sitting. Her face wasn't clearly visible. She wore a large wide-brimmed hat and dark sunglasses that covered the upper half of her face. She was dressed casually, in jeans and a white blouse. Nothing that called attention. The woman leaned toward Sophia, apparently talking to her. The girl looked up, listening. Then, without showing resistance, without visible struggle, Sophia got up from the bench and took the hand the woman extended to her, and the two walked together toward the exit of the plaza. The video showed something that froze the blood of everyone who saw it. Sophia was going voluntarily. There were no signs she was being forced. The girl simply walked hand in hand with that unknown woman, walking away from the group, away from safety, and away from her known life. The street cameras showed the rest. The woman and Sophia left the museum at 11:28, walking toward a gray sedan parked on the street, getting into the vehicle, and driving away into city traffic. Everything had taken less than 3 minutes. By the time Mrs. Anderson made the call to Sarah, it was noon. Sarah was in the middle of her shift at Target when her phone rang. She saw the school's name on the screen and felt a stab of worry. Schools didn't call unless something bad had happened. The principal's voice sounded strangely controlled, as if she was making a superhuman effort not to break. She asked Sarah to come to the Natural History Museum. It was urgent. It had to do with Sophia. Sarah felt her legs stop working. She asked what had happened, but the principal only repeated that she should come as soon as possible. She told her supervisor she had a family emergency and ran out of Target without caring if she got fired. She called Michael while running to the taxi stand. Her husband was driving a passenger when he answered. The terror in Sarah's voice made Michael stop the car immediately, ask the passenger to get out, and drive at full speed toward the museum. Sarah arrived first. There were 2 police cruisers outside the museum. Crying children and worried parents who had arrived before her. Mrs. Anderson had red, swollen eyes. When she saw Sarah, she began crying openly. She didn't have to say anything. Sarah knew immediately. Her daughter had disappeared. Her perfect girl, her responsible Sophia, had disappeared while under the school's care. A police officer approached. He was young, maybe 30 years old, and his face showed the seriousness of the situation. He explained what they knew up to that moment. Sophia had been sitting alone for less than 10 minutes. That a woman had taken her. That they had video of everything. Sarah couldn't process the information. She kept asking where her daughter was, where they had her, when they would bring her back. The officer tried to explain patiently that they didn't know where Sophia was, that's why they needed her help. Michael came running 10 minutes later. He found his wife trembling while an officer asked her questions. He saw the other children being picked up by their parents. He saw his daughter's absence and understood his worst nightmare was coming true. They showed him the video. Sarah had to watch it 3 times before she could focus on the woman taking her daughter. She studied every detail. The way of walking, the clothes, the hat, and the sunglasses. But nothing seemed familiar. She had never seen that woman in her life. Michael didn't recognize her either. The officers asked if Sophia knew anyone who fit that description, if they had family or friends who wore hats like that, and if there was anyone who might have interest in taking their daughter. The answers were always negative. The Thompsons were a small, close-knit family. Sarah had a sister, but she lived in Wisconsin. Michael was an only child, and his parents had passed away years ago. They had no known enemies. They didn't owe dangerous money. There was no apparent reason for anyone to take Sophia. The officer in charge of the case was Detective Martinez. He was 50 years old with 20 years of experience in the Chicago PD. He had worked on dozens of missing children cases. His serious expression told Sarah everything she needed to know about how grave the situation was. The Amber Alert was activated immediately. Sophia's photo appeared on television, radio, and social media. Thousands of people shared the image. An 8-year-old girl with black hair in 2 braids with blue ribbons. School uniform from Washington Elementary. Last seen at the Natural History Museum at 11:30 in the morning. The description of the car also circulated. A gray sedan, possibly a Honda Civic. The plates hadn't been visible on the cameras. There were thousands of gray sedans in Chicago, but at least it was something. Michael and Sarah spent the rest of that day at the police station. They gave detailed information about Sophia. Her daily routine, her friends, her favorite places, anything that could help. Detective Martinez listened to everything, took notes, and asked specific questions. That he asked if Sophia was a girl who would easily trust strangers. Sarah explained they had educated their children about the danger of talking to strangers, that Sophia was intelligent and careful, but she was also an 8-year-old girl who still believed adults were basically good. The detective asked what that woman could have said to convince Sophia to go with her. Michael and Sarah thought about all the possibilities. Maybe she said she was a family friend. Maybe she said her parents sent her. Maybe she said there was an emergency. Madison was interviewed several times that day. The girl was traumatized, crying, and blaming herself for leaving her best friend alone. Between sobs, she remembered that Sophia had been excited that morning, that she had talked about buying a souvenir at the museum shop, and that she hadn't mentioned any strange person. The other kids were also interviewed. None remembered seeing the woman with the large hat. Everyone was busy playing or eating. Nobody had paid attention to the bench where Sophia waited alone. When night came, Sarah and Michael returned to their empty apartment. Tyler was with a neighbor who had agreed to watch him. When he saw his parents arrive without Sophia, the 5-year-old boy began to cry. He asked over and over where his sister was and when she was coming back. Sarah had no answers. She hugged her little son and cried with him. Michael called his sister-in-law to come help them. That night nobody slept in the Thompson apartment. The room Sophia shared with Tyler felt painfully empty. Her bed was perfectly made, just as Sarah had left it that morning. Her dolls aligned on the shelf, her books in order, everything waiting for a girl who hadn't returned. The following days were an endless nightmare. The police reviewed every second of security camera video within a 10-kilometer radius of the museum. They tracked the gray sedan all over the city. They found several that matched the description, but none carried Sophia. They interviewed museum employees, other visitors who had been there that day, and street vendors in the area. Nobody remembered seeing a woman with a large hat and a girl in a school uniform. It was as if the earth had swallowed Sophia Thompson. The first month after Sophia's disappearance was pure agony. Sarah quit her job at Target. She couldn't function. She spent every waking minute searching for her daughter. She printed thousands of flyers with Sophia's photo smiling in her school uniform. She taped them on poles, in stores, and at bus stops. Her daughter's face was all over the city. Michael kept working because someone had to pay the bills, but he barely slept. He drove his Lyft in endless shifts, searching with his eyes for every girl he saw on the streets. Every dark braid made him break. Every school uniform accelerated his heart. But it was never Sophia. Tyler, at barely 5 years old, didn't fully understand why his sister wasn't coming back. He asked every night when Sophia would return. Sarah had no answer. She could only hug him while they both cried. Detective Martinez's investigation followed several paths. They checked human trafficking networks operating in the city. They investigated teachers and school employees. They interviewed neighbors and family acquaintances. Every lead led to a dead end. The woman with the large hat seemed to have evaporated. The gray sedan was never found. The city cameras lost track of the vehicle after 6 blocks. It was as if they knew exactly where the cameras were and how to avoid them. By the third month, media coverage began to diminish. Other cases occupied the headlines. Sophia's photo stopped appearing on the evening news. The world kept turning while the Thompson family remained frozen. In that Tuesday in March, Sarah joined groups of mothers searching for their missing children. She found comfort in women who understood her pain. Together they organized marches, protests, and events to keep attention alive on the thousands of missing children in America. But at night, when she returned to her empty apartment, the pain was consuming. Sophia's room remained intact. Sarah cleaned the dust every week but didn't move anything. The books are in the same order, the dolls are in the same position, and the bed is made, waiting for its owner. Michael had suggested that maybe it would be healthier to reorganize the space, but Sarah refused. Her daughter would return and would want to find everything as she had left it. The first year passed in a fog of pain and false hopes. There were calls from people who swore they had seen a girl similar to Sophia in the market, at a plaza, and in another state. Sarah traveled chasing every lead, spent all the money they had, sold her jewelry, and pawned the TV. But it was never Sophia. Tyler turned 6, then 7. He began to forget exactly what his sister looked like without seeing the photos. Memories of Sophia became blurry in his child mind. Sarah kept videos on her phone and watched them every night before sleeping. Sophia's laugh, her voice, and her gestures. She couldn't allow herself to forget. By the second year, active police searching had drastically reduced. The file remained open, but there was no daily investigation. Detective Martinez had retired, and a younger officer took the case. He promised Sarah he would do everything possible, but they both knew the odds decreased with each passing day. Michael developed chronic insomnia. He took sleeping pills, but nightmares woke him up. He dreamed of Sophia calling him, asking for help, and he couldn't find her. He woke up sweating, running to his daughter's empty room, hoping to find her there. The relationship between Michael and Sarah became strained. The pain was too great. Each dealt with it differently. Michael immersed himself in work. Sarah immersed herself in the search. They barely spoke beyond what was necessary. The apartment that had once been full of laughter was now full of silence. Tyler became a quiet child. His teachers noticed he didn't play much with other children. He sat alone at recess and drew his family over and over. Always four figures: Mom, Dad, him, and his sister. Even though his sister was no longer there, the third year brought painful resignation. Sarah had to return to work. They had exhausted all their savings. Debts were piling up. Life had to continue even though it felt impossible. She got a job at another retail store on a night shift that allowed her to search during the day. Michael kept driving his Lyft but now also took security guard shifts. They needed the money. Bills didn't stop. Tyler needed school supplies, new clothes, and food. Life kept demanding even though a part of their family was missing. 3 complete years passed without a single real clue. 3 years of birthdays uncelebrated, 3 Christmases with an empty place at the table, and 3 years of waking up every morning not knowing if their daughter was alive or dead. Tyler turned 9. He was now older than Sophia had been when she disappeared. Now he was the older sibling in spirit. He helped more at home. He tried to be strong for his parents. But at night, in the bed he had once shared with his sister, he cried silently. By the 4th year, in March 2023, Tyler was 12 years old. He was a teenager now. He was in middle school. He had grown up without his older sister. The first real memories of his childhood were after Sophia's disappearance. His sister had become an almost mythical figure in his mind, but Tyler never stopped looking for her. He had inherited his mother's determination. While Sarah searched the streets, Tyler searched the internet. He checked social media, missing persons groups, news pages, and anywhere he could find information that he had learned to use facial recognition apps. He uploaded Sophia's photos and searched for matches on social networks. Most times they were false alarms, girls who looked similar but weren't her. But Tyler didn't give up. One afternoon in April 2023, Tyler was in his room doing homework. Or pretending to do homework. He was actually on his phone, like all 12-year-old teenagers, scrolling through YouTube looking for videos to kill time before dinner. The algorithm recommended a video to him. It was an American travel vlogger making videos about different cities. The title said something about Chicago street markets. Tyler almost ignored it. It wasn't the type of content he normally watched. But something made him click. The video showed a young blonde guy walking through a farmer's market in downtown Chicago. He talked in English about the food, the culture, and the artisan crafts. Tyler was about to close the video when something in the background caught his attention. At minute 3 of the video, while the vlogger was buying organic vegetables, there was a girl in the background. A girl about 12 years old helping at a produce stand. Dark hair in a ponytail. Private school uniform. Tyler paused the video. His heart began to beat faster. He rewound the video. Watched it again. The girl only appeared for 3 seconds as the vlogger moved. But in those 3 seconds, Tyler saw something familiar. The way of moving, the profile, something in her gestures that he took a screenshot. He zoomed it on his phone. The girl was in profile, looking toward the produce. Her face wasn't fully visible. But Tyler felt something in his chest. A hunch. An instinct that he ran to the living room, where Sarah was folding clean laundry. His mom looked at him, surprised by the urgency in his voice. Tyler showed her the phone with trembling hands. He explained about the video, about the girl in the background, and about the feeling that it could be important. Sarah looked at the image. It was blurry. The girl was far from the camera. Only visible in profile. But Sarah had spent 4 years studying every photo of girls that could be Sophia. She had developed an expert eye for similarities. And this girl had something. The shape of the nose, the angle of the jaw, the way she stood with one foot slightly forward from the other. Small details that only a mother would notice. Michael arrived from work an hour later. Sarah and Tyler were waiting for him with the video ready. Michael worked 18-hour shifts now. He was exhausted. But when he saw the urgency in his wife's and son's eyes, he sat down immediately. They watched the video together once, twice, 10 times. Michael wasn't as sure as Sarah. The image was very blurry. They could be seeing what they wanted to see. For years of false hopes had made him cautious, but Tyler insisted this was different. This time there was something in the way the girl moved that reminded him of Sophia. Small gestures nobody else would notice. The way she tilted her head, how she used her hands when talking. Sarah made a decision. She would contact the detective now handling the case. Show him the video. Ask him to investigate it. Michael tried to temper their expectations. He didn't want Sarah to get her hopes up again. But deep down he also felt a small spark of hope. Detective Ramirez was young, barely 35 years old. He had inherited Sophia's case when Martinez retired. He was understanding but realistic. He had seen too many families chasing ghosts, but when Sarah showed him the video, something in his expression changed. He asked for the video link. He contacted the forensic analysis department. They had specialized software that could enhance blurry images. They could compare facial proportions even with difficult angles. He didn't promise anything but said he would investigate it. The following days were torture for the Thompson family. They couldn't think about anything else. Tyler watched the video hundreds of times. Sarah couldn't sleep. Michael tried to stay calm for his family, but he also felt the anxiety that a week later, Detective Ramirez called them. He had results from the analysis. His voice sounded cautiously optimistic. He asked them to come to the station. The forensic analysis had enhanced the image as best as possible. They had used facial recognition software. They compared the proportions with Sophia's photos from when she was 8 years old. They calculated what she would look like at 12 years old. The results showed a 78% probability it was the same person. It wasn't certain, but it was high enough to justify active investigation. The detective had identified the market stand visible in the video. It was a farmer's market in the West Loop, one of the most popular markets in the city. The video had been uploaded 2 weeks ago. The girl might still be working there. Sarah wanted to go immediately. Run to the market and search for that girl. But the detective stopped her. If it really was Sophia, they needed to be careful. Whoever had her might get scared and flee. They needed a plan. Over the following days, plainclothes officers watched the West Loop farmers market. They looked for a 12-year-old girl who worked at a produce stand. There were dozens of stands and hundreds of kids at the market every day. But they kept looking. On the third day, one of the officers saw her. A girl approximately 12 years old helping at an organic produce stand. Dark hair in a ponytail. Features similar to Sophia's photos. The officer took discreet photos from afar and sent them to the detective. Sarah cried when she saw the photos. The girl was bigger, taller, and more mature. But there was something unmistakable in that face. Michael stayed silent, studying the images. Tyler jumped with excitement. Everyone wanted to believe. But they needed to be sure. The detective organized a careful operation. They couldn't just arrive and take the girl. They needed to know who was with her, if there were other people involved. They had to be smart. Officers watched the stand for a week. The girl arrived every day after school, always accompanied by a woman around 40 years old. The woman never left her alone and supervised everything she did. There was something in the dynamic that didn't feel right. The detective investigated the stand owner. Her name was Patricia Williams. She was 42 years old. She lived alone in an apartment in Lincoln Park. She had no record of children. She had been working at the market for 6 years. 6 years. 2 years after Sophia disappeared, the detective found something else. Patricia Williams had no history before 2015. There was no record of her anywhere before that year. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. The pieces were starting to fit together in a disturbing way. A woman with no history adopts a girl who has no official documents. The girl appears in her life exactly 2 years after Sophia disappeared. The timeline was suspicious. The detective needed to confront Patricia, but he had to do it carefully. If she was the one who had taken Sophia, she might flee. Or worse, she might hurt the girl. They decided to wait for her outside the market one day after closing. It was a Thursday afternoon when Detective Ramirez approached Patricia Williams as she closed her stand. The girl was with her, packing boxes of produce. The detective showed his badge and introduced himself. He said he needed to ask her some questions. Patricia's expression changed immediately from calm to alert in a second. She looked at the girl, then at the detective. Her eyes searched for an exit. The detective noticed her nervousness and knew they were right. He asked about the girl. What was her name, since when had she been with her, and did she have documents? Patricia responded with a trembling voice. She said the girl's name was Lily, that she was her niece, that her parents had died, and that she had adopted her. The detective asked to see documents. Patricia said she had them at home. The detective politely asked her to accompany them to the station to verify the information. It wasn't really a request. Patricia understood she had no choice. At the station they separated Patricia from the girl. Officers specialized in minors spoke with the girl in a separate room. They asked her name. She responded that her name was Lily Williams, that she was 12 years old, and that she lived with her Aunt Patricia, but when they showed her photos from when she was younger, photos that Sarah had provided, something changed in her expression. She looked at the photos with what seemed like recognition, confusion, and fear. They asked if she remembered going to a different school, if she remembered the name Sophia, if she remembered a family with parents named Sarah and Michael, and if she remembered a little brother named Tyler. The girl shook her head no, but her eyes told a different story. There was something there, something buried deep, but not completely erased. Meanwhile, Patricia was being interrogated in another room. Her story was crumbling quickly. She had no adoption documents. She had no birth certificate for Lily. She had nothing to prove her relationship with the girl. When the detective pressed further, asking directly if the girl was Sophia Thompson, Patricia broke down. Not with a complete confession, but with silence, with tears, with the expression of someone whose secret had just been discovered. The detective ordered a DNA test. They would take samples from Sarah, Michael, and the girl. The results would take 72 hours. Until then, the girl would remain in the custody of Child Protective Services while they investigated. Sarah begged to see the girl. Just a moment. Just to look at her. The detective hesitated but finally agreed. Sarah could see her through a one-way mirror. The girl couldn't see her, and there she was. Sitting in a chair in an interview room. No longer the 8-year-old girl with braids and a blue uniform. She was a preteen of 12 years old, taller, thinner, with a more serious expression on her face, but Sarah would recognize her anywhere. That was her daughter. Her Sophia. After 4 years of searching, of crying, of never giving up, there was her girl. The longest 72 hours of Sarah Thompson's life began that night. The DNA results would determine if the girl who had been living as Lily Williams was really her daughter Sophia. Detective Ramirez had explained they couldn't allow direct contact until they had official confirmation. It was protocol. But every minute of waiting felt like an eternity. Sarah didn't return home that night. She stayed at the police station, sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair in the hallway. Michael tried to convince her to go rest, but she refused. Her daughter was a few meters away after 4 years. She wasn't going to leave now. Tyler had to stay with a neighbor. He was a minor and couldn't be at the station for hours. But he called every 30 minutes asking if there was news. His voice sounded excited and terrified at the same time. For years of waiting, and now, maybe, finally, his sister was coming back, while the Thompson family waited with desperate hope. In another room Patricia Williams faced the truth she had kept for 4 years. Detective Ramirez pressured her with specific questions. The holes in her story were too evident. There was no way to keep lying. Finally, near midnight, Patricia began to talk. Not with a dramatic confession, but with silent tears and a broken voice that could barely be heard. Her story was more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Patricia Williams had lost her daughter 4 years before meeting Sophia. A 7-year-old girl named Rebecca, who died of leukemia after 2 years of fighting the disease. The loss had completely destroyed her. Her husband had left her 6 months later, unable to deal with the pain. Patricia was left alone, broken, living in an apartment that was still full of her dead daughter's toys and clothes. She had developed severe depression. Lost her job. Sold everything she had. Was on the verge of suicide several times. She had no reason to keep living, until in 2017, 2 years after losing Rebecca, she found work at the West Loop Farmers Market. It was a simple job that kept her busy. The owner of the produce stand needed help, and Patricia needed a reason to get up every morning. She worked there for 2 years, slowly rebuilding something resembling a life. But the emptiness never disappeared. Every girl she saw at the market reminded her of Rebecca. Every child's laugh was a dagger in her heart. On March 15, 2019, Patricia was at the Natural History Museum. She didn't usually go to museums, but that day was Rebecca's birthday. Her daughter would have turned 11. Patricia had gone to the museum because Rebecca loved dinosaurs and ancient civilizations. It was her way of honoring her memory. She was sitting on a bench in the museum plaza, crying discreetly behind her dark sunglasses, when she saw a girl alone. A little girl with braids and a school uniform waiting on a nearby bench. The girl looked so similar to Rebecca at that age that Patricia felt she couldn't breathe. She approached without really thinking. Something in her broken mind told her this girl was a gift. A second chance. The universe was giving back what it had taken from her. She wasn't thinking clearly. Pain and depression had taken her to a place where logic no longer existed. She spoke to the girl with a soft voice. Told her she looked lost and asked if she needed help. Sophia explained she was waiting for her friend. Patricia saw the opportunity and took it without thinking about the consequences. She told Sophia that her teacher was looking for her, that there was an emergency, and that she needed to come with her quickly. Sophia, an obedient girl who trusted adults, didn't hesitate. She took the hand Patricia extended and walked with her. Patricia took her to her car. She told her she would take her back to her teacher. But instead she drove to her apartment. Once there, the reality of what she had done began to settle in Patricia's mind. She had kidnapped a child. She had committed a serious crime. But when she looked at Sophia, all she saw was another chance to be a mother. Her broken mind couldn't process the magnitude of her mistake. She told Sophia there would be a change of plans, that her parents were busy, and that she would take care of the girl for a while. Sophia began to get scared. She asked to call her mom. Patricia told her she didn't have a battery on her phone and that they would call later. But later never came. The first days were terrible. Sophia cried constantly. She asked for her mom and wanted to go home. Patricia told her soon, just one more day. She bought her candy and toys, trying to console her. But nothing worked. Patricia knew it was wrong. She knew she should return Sophia. But every time she thought about doing it, she remembered her empty apartment, the unbearable silence, and the loneliness that had taken her to the edge of suicide. She couldn't go back to that. She couldn't lose another daughter. After a week she made a decision. She would move, change her identity, and start over in another place where nobody knew her, where nobody would ask questions about a woman with a girl who didn't look like her. She sold everything she had. She got false documents through contacts at the market. There were people who did that kind of thing for the right price. She became Patricia Williams officially, though that had been her real name, but now she had new documents and a new story. And a daughter named Lily. She cut Sophia's hair. She bought her different clothes. She enrolled her in school using false documents. She constantly told her that her name was Lily, that her previous family had been just a dream, and that now her life was with her. At first Sophia resisted. She insisted her name was Sophia and that she had a mom named Sarah and a dad named Michael. But Patricia was persistent, and something terrible happens in the mind of an 8-year-old child when someone repeats something to them over and over. Memories begin to become blurry. Reality becomes confused. By the first year, Sophia had accepted her new name. She responded to Lily. When Patricia asked who she was, she said she was Lily Williams. Memories of her previous family became like distant dreams. She wasn't sure what was real and what was imagined. Patricia treated her well. Never hit her. Never physically abused her. In her distorted mind, she really loved this girl. She saw her as her second daughter. She bought her nice clothes, prepared her favorite foods, and helped her with homework. She was a mother in almost every sense, except she had stolen this girl from her true family. By the second year, Sophia no longer mentioned her previous family. She had completely accepted her identity as Lily. She went to school and had friends. She helped Patricia at the market after school. From the outside they looked like a normal family. But something in Sophia never felt completely right. She had strange dreams, flashbacks of places she didn't remember visiting, faces she couldn't place, and a persistent feeling that something important was missing from her life. But she couldn't identify what it was. Patricia lived with constant guilt. She saw the news about Sophia Thompson. She saw a desperate mother searching for her daughter. She knew the pain she was causing. But she was trapped in her own lie. Too much time had passed. She couldn't return Sophia now without going to prison. And she couldn't bear the idea of losing another daughter. This story that Patricia told between sobs left everyone in the room in silence. Detective Ramirez had seen many things in his career, but this was different. It wasn't a case of human trafficking. It wasn't a kidnapping for money. It was a broken woman who had made terrible decisions out of desperation, but understanding the motives didn't change the fact that she had destroyed a family. That she had stolen 4 years of Sophia's life. That she had caused unimaginable pain to Sarah and Michael. The reasons didn't matter when the damage was so deep. Sarah heard this story through the door. She wasn't supposed to be listening, but she couldn't help it. She felt a mix of rage, pain, and something strangely like compassion. This woman had lost her daughter and in her madness had stolen Sarah's. It was tragedy upon tragedy. The DNA results arrived 71 hours later. Sarah hadn't slept. Michael had managed to rest a few hours in a chair. Tyler had come to the station early that morning, unable to wait at home one more minute. Detective Ramirez opened the envelope with firm hands. He read the results once. Then he looked at the Thompson family, who held their breath in front of him. Probability of maternity, 99.99%. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. That it was official. Lily Williams was Sophia Thompson. The girl they had searched for during 4 years was 20 meters away. Sarah collapsed. Michael had to hold her while she cried. These weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief so intense they physically hurt. Her daughter was alive. Her girl had returned. Tyler cried too. He was going to get his sister back. The sister he barely remembered but had missed every day of his life. Now came the hard part. Reuniting Sophia with her family. But the girl didn't remember being Sophia. In her mind, she was Lily, and Patricia, the woman who had kidnapped her, was her mom. CPS psychologists warned this would be traumatic and that they needed to handle it carefully. They decided to start slowly. Sarah could see Sophia, but under supervision, in a controlled environment, with psychologists present. They had to give Sophia time to process that her entire life for the last 4 years had been based on a lie. The first meeting was in a room designed to seem welcoming. Soft couches, warm colors, toys in a corner. A psychologist named Dr. Martinez was present. Sarah entered with trembling steps. Sophia was sitting on the couch hugging a cushion. She looked at Sarah with a confused expression. This woman was a stranger. Or so her mind believed. But something in her eyes seemed strangely familiar. Sarah sat slowly on the opposite couch. She wanted to run and hug her daughter. But Dr. Martinez had told her to go slow, not to overwhelm Sophia. The doctor spoke first. She explained to Sophia that there was important information she needed to know, that her life wasn't exactly as she remembered, and that the woman in front of her was someone very special. Sophia listened without fully understanding. The doctor showed her photos. Photos of Sophia when she was 8 years old. Photos of her family, her real family. Photos of her with Sarah, Michael, and Tyler. Sophia looked at the photos with growing confusion. That girl in the photos looked a lot like her. But she didn't remember those photos. Didn't remember those places. Didn't remember that family. Sarah spoke with a soft, broken voice. She told her about the day of the field trip, about how she had disappeared, about how they had searched for 4 years without ever giving up, and about how her brother Tyler had found her in a YouTube video. Sophia shook her head. She insisted her name was Lily, that her mom was Patricia, and that this story didn't make sense. But as she spoke, tears began falling down her cheeks without her understanding why. The doctor explained something about memory. How the brain of an 8-year-old girl works. How memories can be suppressed or modified when someone constantly repeats a different story. How it's possible to forget but also possible to remember. Sarah took something from her purse. It was a small bracelet made of colored beads. The same one Sophia had made days before disappearing. Sarah had kept it for 4 years like a treasure. She showed it to Sophia. Asked if she remembered making it. Sophia looked at the bracelet. Touched the beads with trembling fingers. And something in her mind moved. A blurry memory. Her sitting at the kitchen table stringing beads. Someone smiling while watching her work. Sarah told her more things. Specific things only Sophia would know. Her favorite stuffed animal was named Blue Bear. She loved chocolate chip cookies but hated vanilla ones. She had a small scar on her knee from when she fell off her bike at 6 years old. With each detail, something in Sophia began to awaken. Memories she had buried deeply. Recollections her mind had blocked to survive. They didn't all come at once, but they came in fragments. Blurry images. Familiar sensations. The sessions continued for days. Sarah visited Sophia every morning. She told her stories from when she was little. She showed her videos she had kept on her phone. Sophia's laugh when she was a baby. Her first day of school. Her last birthday before disappearing. Michael came too. At first Sophia didn't want to see him. Too many strangers telling her they were her family. But when she saw him, something in her chest tightened. This man had sad eyes. And something in those eyes seemed deeply familiar. Tyler was the last to reunite with her. The doctor had suggested they wait and let Sophia process her parents first. But when Tyler finally entered the room, something changed. Sophia looked at him. This 12-year-old boy was almost as tall as her. And suddenly, without warning, a memory hit with full force. A little boy, 5 years old, crying because he couldn't go on the field trip. Her consoling him. Promising to bring him a gift. Sophia began to cry uncontrollably. Words came out of her mouth before she could stop them. Words she hadn't said in 4 years. Words she didn't even know she remembered. She called Tyler by his name, and then she completely broke down. Memories came now like a flood. Her house. Her room that she shared with Tyler. The enchiladas her mom made on Sundays. The smell of her dad's car. Everything is coming back at once. Sarah ran and hugged her daughter. After 4 years. After thousands of nights crying. She finally held her girl again. Sophia clung to her mom. Her real mom. Crying for all the lost years. The reintegration process was long. Sophia couldn't just go home and pretend the last 4 years hadn't happened. She needed therapy. She needed time to process the trauma of having been kidnapped and having forgotten her identity, but slowly, day by day, Sophia came back. She wasn't the same 8-year-old girl who had disappeared. Now she was 12 years old. She had lost a crucial part of her childhood. But she was alive. She was with her family. And that was what mattered. Patricia Williams was arrested and charged with kidnapping a minor. Her lawyer presented her story as mitigating circumstances. A mentally ill woman who had acted out of desperation after losing her daughter. But the prosecution argued that understanding her pain didn't excuse the pain she had caused. The trial was difficult for everyone. Sophia had to testify. She had to explain what those 4 years had been like. She told the truth. That Patricia had never hit her. That she had treated her like a daughter. But also that she had stolen her real family. That she had stolen her identity. The judge took everything into account. Patricia's mental illness. Her history of traumatic loss. But also the irreparable damage she had caused to Sophia and her family. The sentence was 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10. Sophia never visited Patricia in prison. The doctor recommended keeping distance. Sophia needed to heal without the confusion of conflicted feelings toward her kidnapper, but years later, when Sophia was an adult, she sent a letter. It wasn't exactly forgiveness. But it was closure. Understanding that broken people do terrible things, the Thompson family rebuilt their life slowly. They moved to a new apartment. They needed a fresh start in a place without painful memories. Tyler and Sophia shared a room again. At first it was strange. They were practically strangers. But little by little the sibling connection returned. Sophia returned to school. It was difficult to explain her 4-year absence. Some kids looked at her differently. They whispered. But she also made new friends. People who accepted her for who she was now, not for what had happened to her. Sarah left her night job. She wanted to be home when Sophia arrived from school. She wanted to recover the lost time. Michael reduced his hours too. The family needed to be together. It wasn't perfect. Sophia had nightmares. Sometimes she got confused about which memories were real. Therapy continued for years. But they were together. That was what mattered. This story teaches us important lessons about loss, trauma, and the power of family love. Patricia Williams lost her daughter, and the pain led her to make unforgivable decisions. Sarah Thompson lost her daughter but never stopped searching, and Sophia lost 4 years of her life but found her way back home. If you value real stories like this that show both the darkness and the light of the human spirit, subscribe to the channel. Share this story because there are thousands of families searching for their loved ones, and you never know where a clue might appear. Sophia Thompson's story reminds us that miracles can happen. That technology can reunite families. That a 12-year-old brother with a phone and determination can change everything. That a mother who never gives up eventually finds her daughter. Today, Sophia is 16 years old. She uses her story to help other families. She speaks at schools about safety. She works with missing children organizations. She turned her trauma into purpose. Tyler, now 15 years old, wants to study forensic technology. He says if a YouTube video could find his sister, he wants to use technology to help find others. Sarah and Michael still sleep with their children's bedroom door open. They still check that they're there every night. The fear never completely disappears. But love is stronger than fear, and somewhere, Patricia Williams serves her sentence, living with the weight of what she did. She lost 2 daughters. One to disease. Another to her own terrible decisions. Some stories don't have happy endings for everyone. But for the Thompson family, this is a happy ending. Not perfect. Scarred. But together. And that's all they ever asked for.